This week on TGC News, new guns from SIG, Zenith and Rock Island, a new cartridge from Hornady, and the U.S. government is trying to hurt the gun industry yet again. Welcome back to another episode of the Gun Collective News, the only gun news show that covers things that you actually care about. My name is John Patton. We're back in the home studio, so enjoy the lockdown wall behind me. It's freaking incredible. Go watch that video if you haven't yet. Let's kick this week off with some news that affects the entire industry. Typically, when we see the gun industry being undermined by the U.S. government, it's the ATF at hand. Well, this time, it's the Department of Commerce that has placed a 90-day export ban, pause, whatever you want to call it, on most civilian firearms and ammunition for all non-government users, which is really interesting wording. According to Reuters, they will have an assessment that will review the risk of firearms being diverted to entities of activities that promote regional instability, violate human rights, or fuel criminal activities. What's hilarious is that they're doing that while directly and indirectly funding and sending arms and ammo to Eastern Europe and the Middle East. What's even more interesting is that I forgot that they could hurt the gun industry with alphabet agencies outside of the ATF. Like, oh, duh, it's a real forehead slapper when you go, oh yeah, none of the government is on our side. It sounds to me like they want to be the only warlords on the planet, and that we shouldn't just allow. You know what we should 100% allow? This week's sponsor, KDG.
Oh man, I wish this was a little bit longer. Hey John, any ideas?
Oh, I got this. KDG.
Whoa, the SRX-6. Hey, what else you got over there for the AR?
KDG.
Oh, the MREX AR rail. No, don't do it a third time.
KDG.
What in the crayon eating? Oh, it works.
Oh, and if you want to make that magic happen maybe a little bit easier, try using TGC 10. You know what that is, and you know where to use it. Don't be dumb. Hornady has a bunch of new products to share with us this week. First is one they're calling the HIT Target Impact Indicator. I found a couple of things super interesting about this one. First, it flashes HIT in Morse code when it detects an impact. That might take too long, if you ask me. Rapid fire? I don't know, it might get in the way. They say it's visible out past 1,000 yards, but that it's weather dependent. It has big shoes to fill because the Caldwell Flashbang's green indicator could be seen even on a super foggy / rainy day at 1,330 yards when I saw it in person. Second, unlike other target indicators, this attaches to the target post as opposed to the target itself. And lastly, the MSRP is a very cheap 18 points for two of them. If it works well, that's really not bad. Hornady also released a new cartridge called the 22 ARC without much fanfare. This is essentially the 6 ARC, neck down for a smaller bullet. They claim it outperforms all other 22 caliber cartridges in its class, whatever that means, and that it offers 22 to 50 performance out of an AR-15, basically high velocities out of a smaller gun. There are 3 offerings from Hornady on launch: a 62 grain varmint load, an 88 grain match load, and a 75 grain all-rounder, I guess. It sounds like it could be pretty rad. However, I haven't seen a rifle chambered for this yet, so the jury's still out. Could this be what the 224 Valkyrie was supposed to be? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. That will, you guys are going to be angry. And also in Hornady news, they have 2 new offerings in 5.7x28. A 40 grain VMAX in the black line, and more importantly, in my opinion, the 40 grain FTX in the critical defense line. More defensive 5.7 ammo is definitely a good thing as long as it performs well, and generally speaking, critical defense is pretty solid across the board. Speaking of 5.7 ammo, FN has another new variant of their namesake cartridge, a defensive one called the Defense DFNS, which is a 30 grain hollow point design, and the other is the Gunner line, which is a 40 grain FMJ and meant to be more affordable across the board, both of which are good calls from FN, yeah. Speaking of product lines expanding, Savage Arms announced they will be chambering a bunch of different models in 400 Legend. I won't name them all, but it's basically a few versions of the 110 and some of the Axis. They claim 400 Legend has 100% more energy than a 12-gauge slug with half the recoil. I'd have to test that myself to believe it, but so far I call BS. Also in the news this week is Silencer Co. They are celebrating their 15-year anniversary, congrats on that guys, with a new version of an old can. The Sparrow TI, or titanium version, is a revamp of one of their first suppressors. I believe it might be their first. Coincidentally, it was also the first suppressor that I ever purchased, so I sort of have a special place in my heart for this. I love the Sparrow. They say that it weighs about half of the old can and is entirely made from titanium. If it maintains the performance of the old can and weighs that little, that could be wonderful. MSRP is $4.99 on that limited edition. Now, how about we get into the deal of the week before we get into the new guns? There are a bunch of Halloween sales this week, and the one I think you guys need to know about is over at Vertex. People all the time about how much their stuff costs, and now you can stop complaining because if you use TGC at checkout, you'll get 25% off everything except clearance. That is only good until midnight tonight, and then our code drops back to 15%, so get on it. They've got EDC bags, vehicle storage, and clothing, all with people like us in mind. The code is TGC if you want to support this channel, and I would really appreciate it if you did that. You guys like new guns? Me too. Let's jump in. Zenith has a new one called the ZF56, and it appears to be a blend of roller delayed tech with an AR-15. It has the trigger group, grip, and mags from an AR-15, but the rest of it is all sort of roller delayed stuff. I'm not sure it will be the best of both worlds, but it will certainly be interesting. They claim it weighs 7.3 pounds and will be available with 12, 14.5, and 16-inch barrels with an M-LOK handguard. The price isn't listed on this thing, so make it up down in the comments. That'll be fun. Also new this week is the SIG P365 AXG Legion. Essentially, it's the 365X macro with an AXG metal grip module and the magwell from the macro TAC Ops. I'm not mad about this, but I'd be surprised if this grip module is better than something like the Sharps or the Icarus. The macro is quickly becoming one of my favorite guns for carry, so seeing more versions of it kind of gets me hyped. I like this. And Rock Island is back in the news with a new version of their 5.0. You may remember back to January of this year, they supposedly released a gun called the 5.0, which they tried to hype up to be the next new hot thing in the industry, even though it was designed a few years earlier and blah, blah, blah. The problem was they seemingly never shipped many of them. And the ones that did make it into the hands of my gun-tuber friends were allegedly, as I was told, absolute trash. Fast forward to now, and they've released the new 5.0E, or enhanced version. It's kind of confusing because they keep calling it a perfect 10, but it's chambered in 9, has a 17-round mag, and a 4.9-inch barrel. The new enhanced version has a proprietary optic mounting system and plates, a new slide geometry, and a match-grade barrel, and bigger serrations with speed holes on the front.
What you diddly doing, neighbor?
I'm putting speed holes in my car.
And the original gun had an MSRP right at $1,000. In this new version, twice that, at $2,000. This thing is competing with guns that are flat out excellent. The Dan Wesson DWX, even though it doesn't have an optic cut, and the SAS2 TAC-5 come to mind as excellent guns right at or below that valuation. Rock Island needs to get these out into hands of reviewers immediately. I'd love to hear from you guys on this one. Would you spend 2 G's on a revamped gun? Or would you put that money elsewhere? Let me know in the comments, of course. And while you're typing that, I'm going to hit you with this week's friendly fire question. What is the biggest threat to the Second Amendment, the 2A, right now? Put your answer down in the comments to join the NSA watch list.